We've all heard about the guy that gave his wife everything, but she still left him. Or the girl that did everything for her husband, but he still cheated on her with his assistant. These types of horror stories are no longer in the movies. They've actually become standard. What most people don't realize is that the quality of intimacy has a lot to do with it. While some people will think that intimacy should simply come natural, that only tells us that they don't really understand the purpose and the value behind intimacy and how you could separate yourself from simply being a beast. Tonight, the Ramban's Iggeret HaKodesh is going to tell us how to increase the quality of our intimacy by simply preparing for it with words. This is something that you can learn from the comfort of your home and allow yourself to improve your relationship with your spouse in ways you never imagined before. Enjoy, share, and be holy. B'Shem HaShem Na'atzev Na'atzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Jewish intimacy class on Tuesday nights. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Zora, Esther, Sarah bat Esther, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahites that continue to watch and learn with us, Baruch Hashem, this holy Torah, especially this particular issue that is really an issue in every single house. And needless to say, those of you that have been watching this series and have taken it to heart have already seen the benefits without even telling me, because I hear it from everybody, I see it, and Baruch Hashem for that. So just as a reminder for anybody that wants to be part of the special prayers campaign that we have during these high holidays that are coming up, we have our campaign live right now. You can go to bhshas.org, bhshas.org, that's bhshas.org, or the usual Rosh Hashanah website that we have, which is bhrh.org, and over there you'll see the different options for the special prayers campaign, which this year, Baruch Hashem, we have an extra bonus for those of you that are really have the ability and the interest in getting myself and Rav Ephraim to pray for you during these holidays, as well as actually have the benefit of having the merit of having a Siyum Masechet or Siyum Shas to show up at the Judgment Day. If you see one of these posters online or something similar to it, that's what the campaign is. It's going to be a very big night, big event we're going to have right after the holidays, but certainly the prayers are going to be done during the holidays. So with that being said, we're going to get right into it. We have a new chapter that we've arrived at, which is really the what the first 5 chapters have actually prepared us for. This is called, even though it's a 6th chapter, it's called the 5th path, which the Ramban is calling the Beichut Achibur, which is the quality of the intimate union. So, of course, over the last several chapters and these 30 or so lectures that we've done on this series, a person has learned that intimacy is a world of difference, in the world of Judaism versus, what is sexuality in the world. And in fact, one of the things that the Ramban starts off this segment is actually just repeating some of the things that we've discussed, but reminding us that this is not one of those types of lectures and that you could actually just pick and choose whichever one you want to listen to, because they all built on each other. He's taught us that we have to prepare ourselves for the intimate act, both physically, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, and really the main preparation is for this segment that we're going to be talking about or begin to talk about right now, which is the actual union itself, the intimate act itself. Now, I think that one of the main things that we've learned from the Ramban is that you really can't expect anything, to be similar to what you were taught already elsewhere, because most people have learned about intimacy either through experience or usually through different types of books that are written by people that don't know anything about holiness. So when we go into the world of the Ramban, the world of the holy sages, we see something that's very, very different than anything else. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is really the preparation of the act, but right before. We're not talking about the mental preparation that you need to do, the physical preparation, the diet, the hygiene, the psychological preparation. That we've already done. But here we're going to talk about really what happens right before, that night that you are supposed to be together with your spouse. This is really what the culminating chapter that is going to take us to a completely different world. Because when we say sweet talk, typically people think that they could just have their give the girl a couple of compliments and then simply just act like a beast. Obviously, this is what the majority of the world does, but certainly this is not the way, even though there is a certain element of sweet talk, but it's a little different. Or to say it, to minimize it. But as we go into this, again, if this is the first lecture that you're watching, then I highly recommend that you go all the way to the beginning, to lecture number 1 in this series, because you're simply not going to know what hits you. You're not going to know, how this even makes any sense, who, what, when, and how. Certainly you could benefit from every lecture, but to really get the understanding of what Jewish intimacy is supposed to be, a person needs to really go to the beginning. And that's actually how the Ramban starts off. And he says as follows. I have already acquainted you in the previous chapters many things you need to combine with what is said in this chapter. And you should, as it says in the Song of Songs by Shlomo HaMelech in chapter 8, verse 6, and you set as a seal upon your heart. Now, I will begin and tell you, every pious and modest man, whenever he speaks, will speak softly, gently, calmly. He will never talk arrogantly. He will walk humbly with his head bowed and his eyes looking downward. So too will he behave in all matters. Of course, he's referring to intimacy. However, the wicked man is just the opposite in all of these ways. Now, if you have your eyes in your head, meaning if you're a smart person, you must study the concept wherein, being that in activities using body parts that are not considered disgraceful by people, they do have disgrace from disgraceful activities. Even more so in activities of body parts that are considered disgraceful due to the deeds of people, and all the more so concerning a disgraced body part or deed. Therefore, whenever a man and his wife are engaged in marital union, he must not behave lightheartedly and in frivolity. Certainly, he should not be moody in the presence of his wife, nor speak of unworthy things with her. And therefore, when initiating one's conjugal relations, one must begin by speaking to her in matters that settle her heart, calm her spirits, and make her happy, so that her mind will be bound to yours, and her intention with yours. Speak to her some words that will give her desire, love, and yearning, as well as words leading to the awe of God, piety, and modesty. Tell her about the good, pious, and modest women of previous generations, how they have received honorable and pious children, worthy of a heavenly crown, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, God-fearing, worthy and able to determine a Torah law, as was Kimchit in the Gemara Masechet Yoma, page 47. It says, who merited to have 7 sons who served as Kohanim Gdolim, the high priests. And when our sages saw this, they asked her, how is it that you merited this? And she told them, Not even the beams of my house did ever see my hair. All this emphasizes all of her modesty, her piety, and purity of deed. He should make his advances with her by speaking some words of love and desire, along with the words of the awe of God, modesty, and purity of thought. However, this telling should be before the relations and not during, so that their intentions will be free for the sake of heaven. Up to here is Be'ezrat Hashem what we're going to cover tonight, and really get a good understanding of what does it really mean when you're talking from a Torah perspective. What does it mean to sweet talk to your wife and really get everyone into the right mindset? Now, first and foremost, the Ramban is telling us that he has already gotten us acquainted with other things, and we have to take everything that we've actually learned up till now and combine it with everything that we're going to learn. Meaning that this type of series is one of those that you have to learn from A to Z, from Aleph ad Taf. And it's not one of those where you can pick and choose, watch lecture number 3 and then jump on to number 7 and then go on to 31, because it's simply not going to work. Now, the other thing is that we see that the title of this chapter is not intimacy, but rather quality of intimacy. And there's obviously a world of difference between the two. Because while most people focus on their desire, they get to such a point where many times their desire has overcome them to such an extent that they forget about quality. Meaning they forget that there's even another person involved, because they simply want to enjoy themselves and relieve themselves. And this is one of the things that actually destroys marriages, because when a wife is unhappy with her husband, she doesn't necessarily want to be with him. And even if she doesn't want to necessarily get a divorce, she doesn't necessarily want to be with him physically. And unfortunately, I've had the experience of trying to guide different couples, many of them with success, but others not so much. And many times, the most terrible part that you have to guide people with is in the acts of intimacy, because they've gotten to a point where they have become roommates. They live in the same house, they have kids together, they eat, they drink, they pay the bills together, but when it comes to intimacy, it's literally one of those things where they have forgotten about, where I've talked to couples that literally haven't touched each other in 6 months or more. You know, at times I've told people that if this doesn't change, you have to obviously get a divorce. And other times I knew that this is something that is, not going to change. And then you have to work with that. Is it really worth it to get a divorce or not? What seems to be the problem? Other times, I've seen that there are certain people that are, which is more common, where women are unhappy, and the husbands have no idea why. They have no idea why. And the husbands think perhaps maybe it's because they don't make enough money, or maybe because they have, their looks have changed over the last 20 years, or it's because they have a different ideology than them. But the reality is that if a person understands what Jewish intimacy is, they'll understand that there's a lot writing on there. There's a lot a proper way and a holy way of being intimate can resolve most of the problems that any marriage has. But if a person doesn't know or doesn't care, then they have no concept of what they're doing to themselves. Because if you have the proper intimacy, then you're going to put yourself in a position where whatever you do is going to breed great fruits, meaning it's going to bring great things into the world, both in your marriage, in your children, in your finances, in every aspect of your life. So the Ramban is trying to tell us that you have to combine all of this, everything that we've learned in the last few dozen lectures, and seal all of it in your heart, and then build on top of it before you go into this segment that's going to discuss some of the sweet talking. Next week, we're not going to have a lecture in this series. We're not going to have it for the next couple of weeks. So this gives everybody an opportunity to review the last, few months of lectures that we've done in this series, and I highly recommend even the people that have watched them to watch them again and see which part of it you've actually started applying to your life. Now, I know that some of you think that your marriages are already a lost cause. What's the point? We don't even get along, we can't even eat together, and so on. I promise you that if you watch this series together with your husband, you watch it together with your wife, you will actually develop not only a physical relationship that's unlike anything else you've ever had, but also a spiritual relationship, a spiritual bond that's unlike anything else you've ever had. So this is not one of the series where, like some people thought from the title or from the the name of the series, where they thought that we're simply going to talk about the actual act itself for 40 lectures in a row. There's a lot more to it. So he starts to tell us that if you are in a situation where you don't really know where you stand as far as righteousness, holiness, spirituality altogether, he gives you a few hints. He gives you a few hints of where you stand because he gives you the details of how a righteous person behaves versus how a wicked person behaves. And a lot of the things that we're going to see is in our weekly parasha as well as in last week's parasha, giving us a direct connection between the Ramban's holy teachings and what we're really trying to get to here. And in the parasha as well this week. So he says as follows: I'll begin to tell you, every pious and modest man, whenever he speaks, he will speak softly, gently, calmly, and he will never talk arrogantly. So already he starts to let us know that if you are a person that speaks softly, gently, calmly, and you're never arrogant, you're already in the category of being on the righteous side, on the pious side. Because if you have the type of personality where everything sets you off, you're upset about everything, you're yelling constantly, you're never calm, you always have anxiety runs your life, you're worried about everything even if it doesn't exist, this shows a lack of connection between you and your Creator. Because if a person truly understood where it says, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, that you put Hashem beside you at all times, in front of you at all times, then you know that He is the one that is running everything. Whether it's your ability to make money, your ability to be healthy, your ability to bring children to the world, everything and anything that you have in your life has to do with your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you have anxiety running your life, if you have misery running your life, if you are constantly depressed, that means you're disconnected from Hashem. If you're constantly angry at the world and you think that everyone is after you, or that they don't treat you the right way, or simply you just live a miserable life, that's not because of the people around you, that's because of your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because someone that is glued to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, someone that is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, understands that everything that you have in your life, everything that you have in your path is to your benefit, even if that means someone that's looking to hurt you, even if that means things that are difficult to deal with. Everything that you have in your life is because Hashem said, this is the best thing out of all the things that are available to you. This is what I choose for you, my dear son. This is what I choose for you, my dear daughter. If you are miserable and depressed because you're unhappy in your marriage, or you are waiting to have a child, or you're looking for a husband in the first place, if you're miserable, that means you're disconnected from Hashem. Now, this is a repairable type of damage, but it does require change. So the Ramban is starting to tell us by letting us know that the behavior of a righteous person has to be in a certain pattern. And he begins with the man. Why the men? Because the men, generally speaking, are the ones that typically desire the act. They have to lead be the leader in the act. If you are the type of man that's very frail and to the point where you are so shy that you're even scared to to be with your wife or to ask her to be with you, you're going to have a very, very difficult marriage. If your wife is the type of wife that takes the lead in everything, including this, you have a very, very difficult life and very difficult way in front of you in order for you to succeed in actually achieving holy intimacy. So it's not to say that women do not have a say, but there's a time and a place for everything. And when it comes to intimacy, it is supposed to be something that the husband is the one that's taking charge. On the other hand, this does not mean that the woman should never entice her husband. In fact, the Gemara says that a woman that entices her husband to be together with her in order to bring children to the world gets extraordinary praises and blessings from heaven, that she will have Torah scholars for children. But sometimes people think that just fulfilling their lust, that means they're fulfilling this particular statement, which is not necessarily the case. It all depends on what's the purpose behind your act. Many times people ask me questions about different things, whether it's, they're asking if they should buy something, or they should go somewhere, or they should do anything particular, and they're surprised that instead of giving them a yes or a no, the first question that I typically ask people is, what's the purpose? Why are you doing this? And 9 out of 10 times, people don't actually know why they're doing what they're doing. Or their reason for doing it is not really a valid reason, but they didn't really think it through. So when it comes to intimacy, you have to understand that even that, and more importantly than anything else actually, it has to have a purpose. The purpose does not necessarily need to always be to bring children to the world, because certainly intimacy is a multiple mitzvot are fulfilled. First and foremost, of course, there's the mitzvah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Adam HaRishon, which is to bring children to the world. But what about when a woman is pregnant and she can't get pregnant again because she's already pregnant, or because she's aged out, she cannot bring kids to the world, or she simply cannot have kids, even if she's young? There's still a mitzvah called Onah, the actual mitzvah of being intimate and actually bringing satisfaction to the wife. Meaning that if your wife is the type of wife that requires you to be more patient, requires you to be more calm, requires you to simply take her into consideration and not just your desire, and you're not doing it, not only are you not fulfilling the mitzvah, you're actually forsaking it. So when a person focuses only on their desires, certainly they're not fulfilling any type of holiness whatsoever, and more times than not, their act is going to create all types of spiritual powers to the side of the mezikim and the shedim, the damagers and the demons. So here the Ramban is telling us that this all begins with the way you carry yourself. If you're a pious and modest man, then or at least you're trying to be, you have to start learning how to speak softly, gently, calmly, and never talk arrogantly. What does it really mean, never talk arrogantly? Now, of course, there's the common thing that we all know about, people that just simply talk about how much they have and how much they do, and they're the greatest and they're the smartest, and that's obviously, it doesn't really require much description and much definition. But really, there's more to it. There are some times where in the Hebrew it says medaber gdolot, that he shouldn't be medaber gdolot, meaning that he shouldn't exaggerate certain things as far as his abilities, but also make himself so big that his wife doesn't even feel like she's part of the whole thing. And even more so than that, a person that simply wants all of the attention. He makes everything about himself. If he makes everything about himself, about his pleasure and his need and his ability and his desire and his, this is going to lead to a disastrous long-term relationship, if it even lasts long-term, because when it comes to fulfilling the mitzvah of Onah, the primary focus, according to the Torah, is supposed to be on the woman, meaning making sure that she is actually having a pleasant time, not necessarily the man. The man is secondary. So when people say that Judaism is excluding women, or it's sexist, or anything like that, that only shows you how clueless they are about the Torah itself, because there is no document that was ever written in the history of mankind that favors women more than the Torah. And in fact, we literally have certain laws like this one that favor women to such an extent that it's as if the man is of almost no importance whatsoever. Obviously, there's a lot of importance, but the point is that the priority of intimacy is on the wife to such an extent that the man should actually pray before the act, obviously not next to the woman. He should pray before the act that his wife enjoys it, more than anything else, that he fulfills the mitzvah where she actually enjoys the act. So, if he's one of these people, that's like what the Gemara says, istiragina kish kish karya, which is a person that makes a lot of noise but doesn't do much. You know, like when they have, let's say, for example, you have a pot. Okay, if you have a pot, and let's say, for example, you have a big rock inside that pot, it's going to make some noise. You shake it a little bit, it's going to make some noise. What's going to make the most amount of noise? If you put a tiny little penny in that pot, it's going to make a lot of noise. And that's an arrogant person. An arrogant person makes the most amount of noise. But it has nothing to do with anybody else but himself. So, one of the things that the Ramban is telling us already ahead of time, if you want to achieve holy intimacy, that arrogance has to go. If you can't remove it altogether from your life on day one, which obviously is impossible for people, at the very least, make sure it doesn't show up during this time where you're about to be together with your wife. Arrogance has to go as far as possible, because if you're arrogant, you're not going to have any type of consideration about the enjoyment of the act for your wife, because you're simply going to be too focused on your own desires. Sometimes we see how people literally portray their arrogance without even realizing it, without even realizing there's anything wrong with it. And for example, you go sometimes to certain places. Let's say if people go to the mountains, or they go to places where they have all of these bungalows and different cabins, and you see that there are sometimes people that just decided to engrave their name on the wall. You know, Steve was here, 1988. Joe was here, 1989, and so on and so forth. This is exactly what the Gemara is talking about, istiragina kil garsha, that it's kish kish karya, that the person is feigning attention to such an extent that he wants other people to know that he was there. Why is that of any value for anybody else to know that he was there? No one knows. Why is it okay to damage somebody else's property just to let other people that don't even know you that you were there? Certainly does not have any answer. Because the real answer is a deformity in that person's character traits, that they have gotten to a point where consideration of anybody other than themselves is simply non-existent in their life. So, the first thing that the Ramban is telling us, do not be this person. Don't be an arrogant person if you want to achieve holiness. If you want to fulfill your lust, then this series is not for you. This book is not for you. In fact, even the Torah is not for you. Because one of the things that the Torah is supposed to do is to humble a person. But if a person has no interest in being humble, that means that they don't actually have any concept of what benefits they'll get from humility altogether. But humility is not just a word that you say and therefore you're humble. I once saw this speaker that, let's just say, he wears his arrogance on his sleeve just by simply the way he presents himself, the way he dresses, the way he, carries himself. But the funniest thing in the world is that I've heard him multiple times talk about how, you have to be humble. You have to be humble. You have to be humble. He says you have to be humble while he's bragging about all types of things that he has. So many times, humility is just simply part of people's imagination. Humility is not, making yourself a homeless and a loser and going to the extent of, forsaking all good in the world. Humility is just simply knowing where you stand in the world. And not by comparing yourself to every loser out there, but rather by simply comparing yourself versus what you can be, and more than anything else, what has actually been achieved in the world by greater people than you, and last but not least, by what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has provided you, to know where you are. When you understand these things, then that means that you have never a reason to be arrogant about the money because God gave you the money. Never have a reason to be arrogant about your looks because God gave you the looks. Never have a reason to be arrogant about any of your things that you've acquired through life because God gave it to you and He can certainly take it away. So if a person wants to achieve holiness, then the first thing they have to run away from is arrogance. Now, if a person continues after this, he'll see as follows. The Ramban giving us a little more description of how this humble person, or at least a person that is trying to be humble, is going to carry themselves. He will walk humbly, with his head bowed and his eyes looking downward. So too will he behave in all matters. Many times, people see the pictures or different films or videos of different tzaddikim, whether it be the famous short clip of the Chafetz Chaim, or they see a Rav Ovadia, or any other tzaddikim out there, and you'll always see them, without exception, when they're walking, unless they're carrying a conversation with somebody where they're looking at them, if they're simply walking, they're very familiar with what the cement looks like. Once somebody asked Rav Avigdor Miller, Alav Shalom, what should you do when there's so much pritzut, there's so much immodesty in the world, in the streets? Should you just lock yourself in some cave? Because we're not allowed to look at all of this immodesty that's everywhere, especially today of what level of degeneracy it's gotten to. So, what do? Avigdor cleverly says to him, do you know why cement was created? And the young man says, no. Why was cement created? He says, cement was a special creation just for you. Just for you. Why? For you to become very, very familiar with the cement. As you walk in the streets, instead of looking at all of this immodesty, look at the cement, look at the ground. Know just what's 2 feet ahead of you is more than enough. There's no reason for you to stare into the abyss. Just know where you are. You meet somebody, you look at them, you see where they're, where you are, no problem. But if you want to protect your eyes, you're going to become very, very familiar with how the cement looks like in different neighborhoods. So a person is going to walk humbly with his head bowed, his eyes looking downward, and that's how he's going to behave in all matters, meaning that he's going to also have this type of humble behavior, including in his intimate act. However, a rasha, a wicked man, is just the opposite in all of this. So here we see that the Ramban gives us a clear description of where many people stand. It may very well be some people that are watching this right now. It may certainly be people that you love that fit this description perfectly. This is not to insult anyone, and it's certainly not to try to make it seem as if it's okay either. It's simply a reality check. If you're walking around loud enough with your phone calls for the world to hear, because you want everyone to know you're about to close a deal. You want to let everybody know that you have the ability to yell at some operator. You want everyone to know that you're ordering such and such. You want everyone to know whatever story you find interesting to talk about. And you're walking around with your phone, or you're having these loud, obnoxious conversations, and you're looking at everything and anything that moves. You're loud, obnoxious, you're rowdy, you're bringing attention to yourself. This is the behavior of a wicked person. That's the behavior of a wicked person. Now, interestingly enough, this is not hard to find, because the vast majority of people act like this. Because without Torah, there's no reason for a person to even desire humility. And in fact, there's no way for them to even know what humility looks like. Some people think humility is maybe if you're quiet. You could be quiet and still arrogant. You're just quietly insulting the whole world and thinking that you're better than everybody. You could be a person that has their head down, but still has wicked traits that perhaps that's not one of them. So a person that is going to carry himself this way, the rest of this series is not going to help them unless they're willing to change. And in fact, their wife will never be pleased with them. Because even if they have physical traits and physical abilities to, all types of things that they can do to make a sexual act pleasant, it's never going to be an intimate act. It's never going to be holy. And it's never going to get to a point where it's going to create anything of value. It's only going to create problems. So, the Ramban is telling us that if you want to achieve humility during the intimacy, it also has to be something that you look for during your day as well. If you're not interested in humility altogether, you just simply want to do whatever you feel like it, then sadly what ends up happening is that you have no concept and no understanding whatsoever of the purpose of intimacy in the first place. And many times when people are, get divorced, they find out all types of things about their spouse, either that they've cheated or that there was all types of dishonesty. And this type of dishonesty and adultery and all of these things was going on for a long time. Was going on for a long time. Meaning, she could be with him today, but she has somebody else, 10 minutes later or 10 minutes before. And he's baffled that how could she do this to me? How could she do this to me? I don't understand. Or vice versa. How could he do this to me? I don't understand. When someone is arrogant, all they care about is themselves. So if it's the guy that's arrogant, that means that the woman, his wife, doesn't feel like she's of any value or importance whatsoever. The jewelry that he bought her could just take you so far. How much fun can you possibly have with this piece of jewelry? Even if you wear it every day, eventually it just gets old. The more stuff you have, the less meaning it has. Even if he bought you a car, and he bought you a bracelet, and he bought you a house, and he bought you this, and he bought you that, there's still adultery. Why? Because when it comes to that time where the two bodies and souls are supposed to connect, she feels like he's with himself. He's with somebody else. He's not thinking about her. Because all he's thinking about is his own physical pleasure. He's not taking her feelings, her heart, into consideration whatsoever. And this creates a certain level of misery inside the woman that she herself may not even realize where it's coming from. Because according to the surface, it looks like he provided everything. He provided her a house, he provided her all types of presents, she has food in the fridge, she doesn't have to worry about money, but yet she feels miserable. She feels alone. She wakes up in the middle of the night, and even if he's right next to her, she feels like she's alone. She wants to cry. She literally doesn't know what's making her depressed. What's making her depressed is because that one time that the two people are supposed to be connected, they're not. He thinks that the intimate act is the same thing as a sexual act. And therefore, so long as there's all types of hormones, so long as there's all types of different fluids, so long as there's all types of sounds, that's it, he's achieved the mission. He couldn't be further from the truth. If you do not connect to a woman's heart before and during the intimate act, you have failed miserably. And that failure is not just a failure of a single day. That failure continues to grow and grow to the point where you literally can have a woman that has every possible physical, material benefit in the world, still cheat on the very same person that provided all of that to her. On the other hand, if it's the woman that's arrogant, and she is simply thinks that she is second to none, then what ends up happening is that he could get to a point where he has lost all desire and he no longer finds her attractive. Why? Because arrogance makes a person ugly in the eyes of a person that they're most connected to, because usually that's the person that knows them best. So adultery and all types of lying and cheating is not something that begins because somebody else is more attractive or less attractive. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with what kind of connection, spiritual and physical connection, is actually made during the act of intimacy. And a woman that's unhappy with her husband when it comes to intimacy is a woman that is going to be miserable. And a man that's too arrogant to even consider any of that is a man that's going to wake up one day and find out there's a lot of skeletons in the closet that were hidden from him. A lot of lying, a lot of cheating, a lot of all types of relationships. Some led to an act, some did not. So this is not just the Ramban telling us certain things that we need to do, but it's literally a warning to every single person that is married, and needless to say, every person that wants to get married, that desires a lifelong, fruitful relationship. This is what you need to take into account. If you are an arrogant person, you're not going to be able to achieve any type of spiritual connection that is necessary during the act of unity. Now, the wicked man may or may not know he's wicked before he heard this lecture, but if he doesn't know, and he hears this, he'll see that perhaps he is. Because he is the one that's always loudest, she is the one that's always looking for attention, she is the one that's constantly wanting everybody to look at her, even if that means that that's going to lead for them to have all types of desires, and she doesn't think that hurts her relationship with her husband. Because even her husband says, oh, you look good. She doesn't realize that if the husband really loves you, he would never want another man to desire you. It's not that he wants you to be ugly, but he doesn't want anybody to desire you. If he actually likes that you're getting desired by other people, that means he doesn't love you. It means that he loves the form, but not who you really are. He looks at you like any other type of toy, any other type of material. The second you lose those looks, whether it's through giving birth, some sickness, some type of tragedy, time, that relationship was already over to begin with. So it wouldn't be very difficult for him to cheat, to lie, and to simply abandon what you thought was actually real. So this is not just something for the man to consider, there's also something for the woman to consider. Because if there's no intimacy in a marriage, certainly there's no love either. And intimacy and sexuality are two different things. Further, the Ramban continues, and he says, if you have your eyes in your head, meaning if you're thinking straight, you must study the concept wherein being that in activities that are using body parts that are not considered disgraceful by people, they do have disgrace from disgraceful activities. Even more so in activities of body parts that are considered disgraceful due to the deeds of people, and all the more so concerning disgraced body parts or deed. This is a mouthful. What does it really mean? The Ramban is telling us, think for a second. Shut off the phones, shut off the distractions, think about where you stand, who you are, human being. You have body parts. Whether you're modest, not modest, rich, poor, male, female, irrelevant. Every single person, you have the ability to think for yourself. Think for a moment about your body. When people think about their mouth, they're not thinking about something that's disgraceful. They're thinking this is something that, everyone has in the open. Unless you're Muslim, which, certain sect of them cover their face also because they think that brings modesty, even though the Torah says that certain women that were covering their face in the old days were actually showing that they were prostitutes. But that's what happens when people learn from heretics and don't know why and when and who. But they just do, like sheep. Either way, the Ramban is telling us here, think for a moment, you have a mouth. You don't think of your mouth as something disgraceful because it's not covered. But yet, this normal part of your body can certainly bring disgrace to your life. How? If you misuse it. If you speak all types of nonsense, all types of heresy, you have a potty mouth, you simply decide to slander somebody, you decide to say lashon hara on someone, you're using this tool that is technically not a disgraceful part of your body, but it becomes disgraceful as a result of the way that you're using it. Sort of like if somebody has a ability to speak, motivate, and inspire people, but instead of doing that, they're simply looking to convince people, entice people, and cheat people to do whatever they want. So instead of using their stage to do something that's for the benefit of others, they're constantly looking at their own agenda. So they're using this stage, but for the wrong reason. So the mouth is not a disgraceful part of your body, but yet it can bring disgrace. On the other hand, there are other parts of your body that are technically disgraceful parts of your body, meaning normal people do not walk around with these parts of their body showing because they have some form of shame. Again, this is normal people. I'm not talking about the people that are part of all of these new cults in society that have decided that there's no more pronouns and there's no more genders and there's no more anything of remote holiness or modesty in the world. No, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about normal people that have been living in the world for several thousand years. Throughout all of history, you read some books, you see normal people all agreed that your reproductive organs must be covered, and even parts of your body that don't necessarily reproduce still have to be covered. Up until about 100 years ago, both Jews and Gentiles walked around, even if they went to the beach, covered from head to toe. If you see pictures from 100 years ago, whether it's here in Florida or it's in other parts of the world, you see people, Jews and Gentiles, going to the ocean, they're wearing dresses. No one walked around without any shame whatsoever, to the extent where they wore what people wore in the streets. Literally, the type of clothes that people wear in the streets today are worse than what people called underwear in the previous generation. Why? Because every normal person knows that these are disgraceful parts of the body. You need to have some form of shame, and therefore cover them. So if a person thinks with their mind straight, and they realize that if the part of the body that's not disgraceful, like the mouth, or the leg, or the arm, can still bring disgrace, if I slander people and misuse my mouth, if I steal with my hand, if I run away or I kick somebody, hurt someone, do something that's wrong with your leg, you can make something that's not disgraceful into disgraceful. Needless to say, something that's already disgraceful, like the reproductive organs, is bound to create disgrace if you do not utilize it the right way. Now, one of the places that I saw that puts this into perspective is Rav Ovadiah's Anaf Etz Avot. In Anaf Etz Avot, in chapter 4, Mishnah number 21, Rav Ovadiah goes over the Mishnah that in the name of Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, that says jealousy, desire, and honor remove a person from the world. Meaning a person that follows their jealousy, that lives a life full of jealousy, desire, and seeking honor, he loses his value and enjoyment of this life, as well as losing his place in heaven. He ends up losing his olam haba. Why? And he gives some examples of, let's say, a person that is following their desire. He says, if men are overcome with desire for women, they grow old before their time, and they end up becoming afflicted with many terrible illnesses. This is not something that really needs qualification. As you see in society, men that are promiscuous end up becoming very miserable men. They end up aging quite fast, where your average, 25, 35-year-old man looks at least 10 or 15 years older than what he is, depending on how promiscuous he was, even if that promiscuity was an addiction to himself. You see them dying younger. You see them becoming much sicker. Of course, there are many different types of sexually transmitted diseases. But further, the Rambam writes in Ilchot Deot, chapter 4, verse 19, that when seminal emission drains the body, drains the energy from the body. Seminal emission drains the energy from the body and weakens the strength of the eyes. And the more a person emits seed from his body, the weaker he becomes, and the sooner his life is lost. As Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest man, said in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 3, do not give to women your strength. So a person that wastes seed, whether it's with himself or different types of promiscuity, is punishing himself, is poisoning himself, is destroying himself without even realizing it. He thinks he's happy because he's satisfying a momentary desire, but he doesn't realize that that momentary desire also acquires him a much more significant damage, as he has just made himself weaker, he can't think straight. And there's actually even, not just in the Jewish world, even in the non-Jewish world, there are many types of thinkers and different types of high performers that have learned the value of seed retention. So much so that there's literally segments of people that promote seed retention, because they know that when they do restrain themselves, they're also preserving their strength. They're also keeping their mind clear. And those that think, oh, no, but then I'm going to, it's a build up energy. I'm going to explode. I'm suffering. No, you're not understanding. If you learn how to control yourself, you will actually see this as the greatest benefit that your body could ever have. Because the confusion, anxiety, misery, anger, all of those negative moods stem from there. Further, the illnesses, the weaknesses, you're getting sick every other day, stems from there. Lack of desire during the times that you want to have desire and need to have desire because your wife is there, the reason is there. Men that are addicted to pornography are destroying their brain. And there's literally scientific research that discusses it. We have a film called Tikkun Abrit. Part of the film discusses this. But further, the Rav says that if a person has marital relations to excess, he grows old before his time, he grows weak, his eyes grow dim, and he suffers many aches and illnesses. As the expert doctors say at the time, 1 in 1,000 die of other causes, whereas the rest die from excessive marital relations. And likewise, Shlomo HaMelech says in Ecclesiastes, chapter 11, verse 10, childhood and youth, meaning blackness, as the person's hair is black in his youth, childhood and youth are vanity. And the sages say in the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, page 152, things that a person does in his childhood will blacken his face in his old age, as he will lose his strength. And Rashi over there explains that excessive marital relations is what is being referred to when it talks about childhood, what a person does in childhood. Because usually a person that's young, unmarried, they are more inclined to waste seed and become addicted to pornography and all types of promiscuity with self. This is one of the leading causes for them to lose their strength, to become sicker, to not have a clear mind. And the Rashbatz writes in a Sefer Magen Avot an analogy, which he quotes the Mivchar Apninim, that a jealous person and a greedy person once met with the Satan. And the Satan said to one of them, ask whatever you want, and whatever you wish, I'll give you. But whatever you wish for, your friend will be given double. The jealous person didn't want to be the one to make the request first, because he was afraid that whatever he's going to get, his friend is going to get double, and he's going to be even more jealous. So he said, no, you start first, Mr. Greedy. The greedy friend was looking forward to receiving double. So he pressured him. No, come on, do it. So what did the jealous person do? His jealousy overcame his common sense to the extent where he said, you know what? He's going to get double? Okay, fine. Take one of my eyes out. So his friend, the greedy person, lost both eyes. What is really the lesson here? When a person doesn't think straight because his sexual desire, lust, and simply loss of control is running his life, he's constantly looking for mating partners like he's some type of zoo animal, he's going to make the worst possible decisions, even if that means that he's going to hurt himself just so long as he fulfills a desire. So the Rav Ovadia here is telling us that one of the primary places that a person destroys their life and loses their olam haba is when they allow their desire, their lust, to simply lose all control and feel that if they have some type of desire, they need to fulfill it. This is certainly apparent in society today, where people think that they were born a certain way and therefore they should do whatever they feel, even if that is against the normalcy of the world, it's against humanity. So, when it comes to arrogance, humility, and now you have a person that has taken his lust, his desire, and allowed this arrogance and this all types of bad character traits to control that lust, you have a horrible, horrible conclusion or outcome. On the other hand, if a person wants to achieve holiness, this is what they have to do. And therefore, says the Ramban, whenever a man and his wife are engaged in marital union, meaning when it's time, it's mikveh night, or some other night while your wife is pure, and you want to be together, you have to know you have to behave in a certain way. Why? Because unlike what sexuality is, which is in essence just to fulfill some type of desire, momentary desire, in order to reach some type of climatic moment, and it's over. If you put some thought into it, you'll realize that there's a lot more that's going to come out of this situation. So the Ramban says this is the one time that you're supposed to have the most intense focus. And therefore he must not behave lightheartedly or be frivolous. Certainly he should not be a moody person in the presence of his wife or have different types of mood swings, nor should he speak of unworthy things with her. Why? Why is all of this boundaries? Average person saying, what do you mean? I just want to be with my wife. I just want to be with my husband. Why we have to control the way we talk? We have to control what we talk about. We have to control even how we behave. What's the why? Why do we need all this? The Mishnah in Masechet Avot, Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah number 13, says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Schok vekalut rosh margilim adam la'irva. If a person is most often one of these people that takes things lightly, doesn't really take life seriously, he's very frivolous, one of these people that's just like a jokester, like a teenager or a child. While some people enjoy his company, you should know none of those people will ever want to marry him. And needless to say, none of them should ever marry him. Because if you take life so nonchalantly and everything is a joke to you, then you're never going to be able to achieve any level of holiness whatsoever. Certainly there's a time and place to be, to laugh, to be humorous. But if a person doesn't know how to do that, he just always takes things, just like everything is nothing. Everything is a joke. He's just one, big joke his whole life. He's a comedian, even if he's not a professional comedian. This type of person is going to be very, very difficult to have a relationship with altogether. Why? Because what ends up happening is that this type of behavior attracts that type of behavior. Meaning, if he is careless, he's going to attract careless people. If she is careless, she's going to attract careless people. And Rabbi Akiva already tells us the outcome of this careless behavior. If you are a careless person, if you're a frivolous person, if you're one of these people that's, nothing's a big deal, it's only a matter of time before you're going to break all boundaries, because nothing matters. So, if the opportunity arises and one of his co-workers laughs at his joke, he's going to forget about the fact that he's even married with kids. And if the opportunity arises, he'll cheat on his wife of 20 years with some person that doesn't care either about her husband that she's married for 10 years. That type of behavior leads to immorality. Many times, guys ask me questions about different shidduchim. And recently, one of my students asked me about a shidduch that he was going with and trying to consider, but he had an issue. And he said, she's not really talkative. She barely talks. Now, he's used to, seeing women that like to talk a lot. You've seen those types of women where anytime she has any idea, she not only wants to share it with the whole world, but she wants the whole world to hear her say it, even if they don't want to hear it. So she talks on the phone, and even the next door neighbor can hear it. She's at a coffee shop, and even the people next to her can hear it, and even the people in the next coffee shop can hear it, and even people in the next street can hear her. And when she laughs, the whole world hears her. And she has this type of speech pattern where she says, Kapara alecha, chaim sheli. Israelis will say, all these expressions, the equivalent of, let's say, women that say to everybody, oh, sweetie, how are you, sweetie? How are you, honey? To complete strangers. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Thank you, honey. And now he met this little, modest woman that doesn't talk much. He's like, well, I don't know if this is good. I told him, no. You want a righteous woman? That's what you're looking for. A woman that doesn't say, hey, sweetie, hey, honey, hey, baby, to just any stranger out there. Why? If she says, hey, sweetie, hey, honey, hey, baby, kapara alecha, and all these different expressions that people use in different languages, she's a lighthearted person. She's a person that doesn't take anything seriously. And if she doesn't take anything seriously, it's only a matter of time where she doesn't take this relationship seriously. Why? Rabbi Akiva said it. Rabbi Akiva said it. And it's actually what happens in the world. Who cheats? You're never going to see a modest, righteous woman cheat. You're never going to see a righteous, modest man cheat. It doesn't happen. Why? They never put themselves in those circumstances. It's not that they're not normal and they are not people. They have desires. They have attractions. But they don't put themselves in those situations where they become so comfortable with society that they have these types of conversations. And a woman that calls people, hey sweetie, hey honey, and hey baby, and all types of other expressions, is a woman that is bound to be promiscuous with somebody that's not a husband. And you can say, oh, that's an exaggeration. Go test it. Anybody that you know that has committed adultery, talk to them for 5 minutes. See how they talk to their clients. See how they talk to their coworkers. See how they talk to just simply anybody, a clerk at the supermarket. See how that relationship started. That relationship, that was the adulterous relationship, see how it started. Exactly with this formula. It starts with a nonchalant expression, no big deal. This is just the way I talk. It's the mindset. This is the way I talk. Why? I call everybody sweetie. What's the big deal? It's just the way I talk. Why are you so loud on your phone and with your conversations? Well, it's just the way I talk. If you don't want to hear it, just shut your ears or go somewhere else. I'm alone in the world. That type of attitude, that's exactly how that promiscuous relationship started. One of the people she called sweetie, one of the people she called honey. He didn't know her before she called him honey. He didn't know her before she called him sweetie. He didn't know her before he heard her voice down the street when she was having a conversation with one of our girlfriends. But now he does. Why? Hey, it's like a lion or a tiger that's out in the field looking for prey. Guess what? If one of the animals that's trying to hide makes a sound, no hiding in the world is going to help them. When you are a nonchalant person and you don't care about the words that are coming out of your mouth, you don't realize that you are putting yourself in a position where you're not going to be who you're supposed to be. Meaning, you were within a relationship, you're married, you have kids, but you have this type of attitude, you have this type of speech pattern, you're going to get somebody that's hunting. You're going to get somebody that's hunting, you're going to get his attention. And guess what? Because you already have this nature where it's just, well, what's the big deal? When that man comes up to you and he says, wow, you look really pretty, ma'am. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's so nice. This young man called me ma'am. Wow. Who are you? What's your name? How you doing? You know what? There's an empty seat over here. Me and my girlfriend are just having some coffee. You can sit with us. You sound like an interesting person calling me ma'am. And before you know it, she cheated on her husband. It's ma'am. And she feels miserable. And she wants to kill herself because she realized she just made the mistake of her life and she can't undo it. The same concept with guys. Guys that are friendly. Friendly to everyone. This type of behavior leads to promiscuity. Why? Like I said, Rabbi Akiva said it. If he said it, it's true. That's how our Torah works. Our sages said it, that means that's what we got at Mount Sinai. Now, there are also other types of light-hearted mindsets, even within the frum world. In the non-frum world, I don't really need to give that much description because everyone already knows. But even in the religious world, you see that from time to time, unfortunately, marriages fall apart and there is adultery at times. Certainly it's much less than the secular world by a long shot, but it still exists. And like I said many times, adultery doesn't just happen. Because he said it just happened, or she said it just happened, it doesn't actually mean that it just happened. This all starts with a type of mindset, an attitude. When a woman feels it's okay to talk to anybody, or a man feels it's okay to talk to anybody, I'm just being friendly, that's a light-hearted attitude that's going to lead you to trouble. But sometimes a person doesn't necessarily think that he should talk to anybody or talk any way that he wants to anybody, but unless he knows them. So what does he do? Or what does she do? He says, listen, I'm a religious woman. I love my husband, but I also like my friends. So what do? Let's go on a double date. Double date. He says, honey, we're going to go on a double date to a restaurant and have some steak with my girlfriend and our husband. And him, sure, he's thinking, I'll eat steak. Whether your girlfriend and your husband are there or not, I'll eat the steak, sure, why not? He doesn't think too much about it. Why? He's light-headed. He's married to a light-headed person. Neither one of them realizes the mistake they're making with this double date. Why? You go into a fancy schmancy restaurant. No one goes to a fancy schmancy restaurant wearing a garbage bag for clothes. What do? Usually, you dress up. You look your best. It's date night after all. And they forget about the fact, wait a minute, I'm going to be with my wife, but there's also going to be another woman that the Satan is going to make sure she's going to look extremely attractive to me. And I'm going to look at her across the table for 2 hours while my wife is there. And my wife is going to look at her husband, who also is going to look attractive to her. Even if not by looks, simply by the things that he says. Or even not by the things that he says, but simply by the way he looks. And then everybody comes home. And even if there's no adultery that follows it, everyone goes back to their house. They want to be intimate. But what can they do when they can't eliminate the thought in their mind of who they just looked at for the last 2 hours? So he is with his wife thinking about her girlfriend. She is with her husband thinking about her girlfriend's husband. And vice versa. And instead of bringing holiness to the world, they're bringing more strength to the shedim, to the demons of the world. And they don't know why. Oh yeah, my son was conceived on such and such date. I don't know what happened that he behaves this way. How does he behave, ma'am? Oh, I don't know. He doesn't want to put on his kippah ever. He doesn't want to pray. He hates the Torah. He yells at me and my husband. He's obnoxious. He's rude. So he's a ben sorer umoreh. That if it was the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, they'd kill him. Yeah, but I don't know why. Well, of course you know. What do you mean you don't know why? You conceived them on the day that you were looking at somebody else. You conceived them on the day that your husband was thinking about somebody else. What did you think was going to come out of there? You thought that there was going to be a fruit that's delicious that's going to come out of such conception? The only thing that comes out of those types of things are rotten fruits. And that's why many times you see relatively normal people having kids that literally compete with Esav when it comes to the way they behave. This all has to do with this light-hearted type of mindset, where people simply do not take their souls anywhere as seriously as they do their desires. Desires for steak or desires for other things. Worst yet is what ends up happening many times in these types of double dates is that people drink. Why? Make the mood even better, which magnifies everything I just said even more. Why? Because now the already lightheaded type of lighthearted people that we've already talked about, now they have alcohol in their system or some form of drug, marijuana, cocaine, crack, whatever they are consuming that day. They're putting something else, which means that whatever you're putting in your system that's not really supposed to be there is going to magnify the worst parts about you. You're already a light-hearted person. You put some alcohol, you become completely ridiculous. No, but I didn't drink much. I only had 1 glass of wine. That's just enough to destroy your life. No, I didn't do much. I just had a couple of drags. That's just enough to make you suffer for the rest of your life. Why? Because you're going to have that, then you're going to look at that, then you're going to think of that, and before you know it, a baby comes to the world, and that baby has no element of holiness in him whatsoever. None, zero. Why? You created him under the influence of the Sitra Achra, of the Satan himself. And anyone that says, nah, come on, what do you want us to be secluded in some cave? No, nobody said you need to be secluded in some cave. But why do you need to go on date night with other couples? And needless to say, why do you have to be so nonchalant about things as if your heart is made of stone. What did you think? That your wife's friends are not going to attract you when they're looking their best, and your wife perhaps isn't because she just gave birth or for whatever other reason? What did you think? That your heart is not going to care? You're just going to, come on, no, I love my wife. Yeah, you love your wife when you're seeing one of our friends forgot her clothing in the house. She came with no arms and no legs. It's not going to affect you. It's not going to bother you. You're that holy. Every man and woman has to be realistic. Has to be realistic. And not put themselves in situations that they know they won't be able to handle. And even if you think you can handle it, listen to what the sages say. They know better than you. You can't handle it, even if you think you can. And for all of these guys and girls that say, no, come on, I don't care, even if his wife is not modest, and her friends are not modest, and no one's modest, I don't care, I'm never cheating, we're together, everything. Give it time, you'll see that they'll get divorced. Give it time, you'll see that there is cheating. Give it time, you'll see that there is all types of lies and cheats. In the end, it's all one big imagination. There's been several people that were supposable superstars and celebrities that pretended to have a happy marriage only for a few years until the worst, most horrible, most horrific skeletons in the closet were disclosed to the world. In front of the camera, everybody's happy. Everybody is living in heaven. Behind the camera, it's a living Gehinnom. And all of those people that are not living in the way of Torah, there is simply no way for them whatsoever to attain any level of holiness, and needless to say, any level of stability. Why? Because their desires are controlling their life. So, when a person thinks that it's okay to talk to anybody, he's a big talker, you should also know, Shlomo Melech says, if he's a big talker, he's a big sinner. If he's a big talker, he likes to talk a lot, she likes to talk a lot, for sure they're a big sinner. Either the frivolity that we talked about, where it leads to promiscuity, or it's simply, you talk a lot, you're gonna make sins. Slander, lashon hara, evil speech of some kind, foul mouth, foul language. There's literally a million different sins that a person can make with their mouth. The more you use it, the more you're bound to sin. And this is also one of the reasons why when you meet Talmidei Chachamim, unless they're talking about Torah, they rarely ever talk. Now people say, whoa, what's wrong? Is he okay? Yeah, he's perfectly fine. Oh no, he didn't say anything. Well, it's because nobody was listening to Torah. They were all interested in talking about nonsense. He's a Talmid Chacham, he's a Torah scholar. He's not going to talk about nonsense. Oh, why don't he just tell us about his life? His life is Torah. That's his life. Well, why don't he just join the conversation? And what? Make sins? No. And this is the thing that people simply don't understand. Many times they want to meet Torah scholars, but they have no concept that the Torah scholar is not going to, if he's a real Torah scholar, he's not going to have time or interest to chit-chat, to small talk, or to do any of these types of things. Why? Because he knows that the more you talk, the more you're bound to sin. And this is why I told my student that if you found a woman that's not a big talker, you found an opportunity. Why? Because if she's not a big talker, you already know that most likely she's not a big sinner. Most likely, if she's really this way, she become a very righteous woman, if she's not already a righteous woman. But if she's a big talker, she's one of these people that's friendly and talks to everyone, it's already a red flag. Let's just say that. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Chagiga says that in Shemaim, based on a verse that says umagid la'adam ma sicho, that it tells a man what his conversation was. That's telling us that in the day of judgment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to show us every single conversation that we ever had and analyze every word, every sentence, every subject, everything. So much so that the Otzar HaMidrashim in the name of Rabbi Akiva on page 419 says, Umagid la'adam ma sicho, that he tells a man everything that what his conversation was, is actually where they'll bring all of his conversations to his grave and determine how much to punish him inside the grave, even before he goes to the Beit Din of Shemaim. You're a big talker, you're flirtatious, you're lighthearted, light-minded type of person, expect to spend a lot of time in the grave suffering. Why? Because if you talked a lot, you sinned a lot. Furthermore, the Baal HaTurim says in Parashat Kititze, in this week's parasha, notice what it says, Naki ye lebito shana, that he should be remain in his house a year. The Baal HaTurim says, notice that in those four words, Naki ye lebito shana, the last letter of each, if you take the last letter of each word, it spells the Yud and the Hey, the Vav and the Hey, which is the name of God. In order to remind you that yes, stay in your house a year, meaning after a Jew gets married, he has to be with his wife throughout that year, where they sleep in the same place every night throughout that whole year. He's not allowed to take trips away from his wife during the first year. And he's not allowed to go to war during that first year. Anyone, when they were going to war, they would ask, anyone get married within the last year? Anyone build a house within the last year? Anyone made certain things in the last year? They see who. Anyone scared? All types of questions. One of them was anyone that got married in the last year. If he got married in the last year, they remove him from the army. Send him home. Why? You have to stay with your wife during the first year. And the Baal HaTurim says, just like the Torah is telling you, stay in your house during that, as a result of being married for the first year, it's also here to remind you that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as his name is in this verse, as the last letter, is also in your house during that year, meaning during your intimacy. Your HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there also, overseeing your conversations. Umagid la'adam ma sicho is actually referring to what type of conversation are you having before intimacy. And that's what the Rashi says in the Gemara Masechet Chagiga, page 5a, where he says, what is this referring to? This is referring to the judgment from heaven that's going to come upon a person for foolishness that they say, or light-hearted type of conversation that they have before intimacy. But then the Gemara says, wait a minute. But the students of Rav once peeked in to see how does their Rav act with his wife. Meaning they wanted to learn the behavior of how he talks to his wife. And they heard that he was, laughing with his wife. And they asked the Rav, whose name was actually Rabbi Abba, who was the Talmid of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, And many say that he actually is the one that took the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and wrote them down, and that's what became the Zohar Kadosh. The Talmidim of Rav heard him kidding with his wife, and they asked him, how is this? And the Gemara says, that's because it's not that you're never allowed to be lighthearted, is that should not be your standard regardless of what the circumstances is. Your behavior should be based on what is needed. In the case of Rav, obviously his wife needed that type of talking in order to be enticed, for them to be intimate. But if that's not what's needed, and you're still doing it, then obviously your head is not in the right place. Because if you're doing it then, you're doing it elsewhere, in places that it's forbidden to do it. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Eruvin, page 100, says, if it wasn't for the Holy Torah, we would learn about intimacy from the rooster. Why the rooster? It says because if you look at the rooster and its behavior, before it mates with the chicken, it does this dance and, shows off, and it entices and impresses the chicken. And the sages that knew the language of the chickens also, sages of the Sanhedrin knew 70 languages, which included the language of chickens, the language of babies, the language of crazy people, all types of different languages. They asked, what does the rooster say to the chicken? It says the rooster is impressing upon the chicken that if I don't buy you this fancy dress, then I'll take off my own crown. Which people that are familiar with the subject know that if you take the crown of the chicken, of the rooster, off, it's like neutering it. It loses its ability or desire to be intimate, to mate. So in essence, the rooster is enticing the chicken by giving all types of promises. I'm going to buy you this. If not, I'm not a man. I'm not a rooster. And the Gemara says, this is where we would learn how to be intimate with our wives if it wasn't for the Torah. So what's really the point? The point is, this is actually what the Torah teaches. That you have to entice and impress your wife before you're intimate. But you have to know what's required. If what's required is for you to be lighthearted and laughing, and that's to our personality, then that's what you do. You've turned something that's forbidden into a mitzvah. But if it's not necessary, but you're still doing it because that's your personality, you're not making a mitzvah. You're actually going to be judged for it. Because ultimately, the whole goal of the rooster is to attract the chicken. And the same concept, and even more so, to us. We have to attract the woman's heart. Because a woman's heart is typically confused. That's their nature. Their heart is constantly, their mind is constantly confused. The Gemara says, Nashim da'atan kala. The mind of a woman is simple. Not that they're stupid, chas v'shalom, but it's able to move from place to place very quickly. And it's necessary for her to do that. She doesn't delve on any one particular thing forever like a man does. If a man is watching a screen, he could be so focused on that screen that even if his wife is screaming at him, he wouldn't even know she's there. Literally, the whole house can go on fire, but he's watching some television. A woman, on the other hand, she could be in the middle of sleeping, 3 o'clock in the morning. One of the kids makes a little peep. She wakes up right away. She's ready to save the world. She's in the middle of something, she's cooking, cleaning, she's doing something, but one of the kids makes a small, tiny little cry. Immediately she stops, she runs over there, she's able to do 50 million things. How? How are you not focused on the cake, on the cookies, on the meat, on the 50, 100 things that you're doing already, and you heard this kid that made a noise on the 3rd floor? I don't know. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the woman. But because that nature is required for her to raise our kids, at the same token, her mind is always in a lot of places, which leads to constant confusion. This is why a woman needs constant chizuk much more often than a man does. So the Chachamim say, the goal of this enticement between the man and the woman and his wife is to attract her heart, because he will eliminate this confusion that she constantly has that is necessary for other places, but is not good when it comes to intimacy. He will help her focus. And that's what the Ramban continues saying, where therefore, when initiating one conjugal relation, one must begin by speaking to her in matters that settle her heart, calm her spirits, and make her happy, so that her mind will be bound to yours and her intention with yours. So here the whole goal of the conversation before intimacy is to get both of you on the same level, both mentally but also emotionally. Because if you're saying jokes when she's not really in a big mood for jokes, she's not interested in the jokes, and she doesn't even find you funny, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not bringing her heart closer to yours. You're not bringing her state of mind closer to yours. And what ends up happening when a person is arrogant and doesn't actually take that into consideration, because he just wants to make a joke because he likes to make jokes. He just wants to laugh because he likes to laugh. And he doesn't think of her and her perspective and where she stands. What ends up happening is that they could still have the act, but it'll never actually be intimacy. It'll only be sexuality. Because her heart, her mind is still confused. She's still thinking about 50 other things. But she knows she's his wife, and she's there. He thinks, oh wow, she loves me because she was with me. Not necessarily. Oh, she's happy because she's... Not necessarily. Why? Her mind is 50 other things. So there's a certain amount of effort and work that's required before the actual act itself. And if a person is arrogant, he will never take any of this into consideration. And as the Ramban continues, speak to her words, some words that will give her desire, love, and yearning, as well as words leading to the awe of God, piety, and modesty. Tell her about the good, pious, and modest women of the previous generation, how they received honorable and pious children, worthy of heavenly crown, students of Torah, God-fearing, worthy and able to determine the Torah law. As Kimchit, who merited having 7 sons who served as Kohanim Gdolim, the high priests. So here the Ramban is telling you, you have to speak to her certain words that will entice her. Entice her emotions. Let her know how much you care about her. Entice her desire. But also, don't start talking like somebody from some movie. Don't turn this sweet talking into the sweet talking of pornography stars. The sweet talking has to be in such a fashion where it has certainly the limitations of man while still looking above. Limitations of man that require an emotional connection. Limitation of man that require a physical connection and a enticement of both, but also take into account that if you have a house of Torah and your wife is a righteous woman, or at the very least she's trying to be, let her know the benefits of this holy act and how she's a modest woman and how she's modest but also beautiful. But at the same token, this is not just something that is you're recognizing only. This is something that HaShem is recognizing as He showed us in the Torah. And you can bring up, look at these righteous women that lived in the past. Now the Ramban specifically highlights a point here where he tells us this modest woman of the past generations. Why the past generations? Because certainly there's some moron that is going to literally tell his wife about some woman that's that's righteous but still alive, and ruin everything. We just tell, wow, you're so modest. I love you, honey. You're almost like the Rabbanit. What? Yeah, the rabbi's wife. Yeah, she's, you're modest like her. Wait, why are you looking at her? No, I'm not looking at her. I'm just saying you're modest like her. Don't mention anyone that's alive. Don't think about anyone that's alive. Because the worst thing in the world that you can have is somebody that you're going to have her in her mind, or she thinks you have her in her mind. So this literally is something that we have to simplify and make it idiot-proof. Because there are a lot of idiots in the world today that say things that ruin lives. I told you guys, there was a guy that came to me one time and was coming to Shurim for a while and so on, and then he told me he's having problems in his marriage. He wants to talk to me. I told him, fine. What's the problem with your marriage? He goes, no, I don't know. My wife is mad at me. I don't know what's going to happen. I said, what happened? It's like, well, listen, I told her that, the times we're together, it's boring. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe anything. So I had to ask, what do you mean boring? What are you talking? What's boring? What? She doesn't want to learn with you. She doesn't want to sit with you. She doesn't want to go bowling with you. She doesn't. What are you talking about? He's like, no. All that stuff's fine. We go on vacations. We go on boats. He has a yacht. He has a this. He has all these type of stuff. I'm like, okay, so what's boring about that? He goes, no. All that stuff is fun. I said, yeah, but you said you told her it's boring. He goes, no, that's not what I was referring to. And that was that was what I was hoping that he was actually referring to. Because the other option was the worst possible thing. I said, what were you referring to? He says, no, I told her that she's boring in the bedroom. I wanted to punch him in the face. But since I'm not allowed, I simply told him, your marriage is over. You just murdered your wife. Goes, what? What are you talking about? No, she's just mad. I'm like, no, you don't understand what you just murdered your wife. You don't realize it. But you just murdered a Bat Yisrael. She gave you 2 kids and you called her boring? There? You just murdered your wife. The worst possible thing that you can possibly imagine saying to someone is not as bad as what you just said. Like, just imagine the worst thing you could say, you just topped it off. You just created a whole new category of the worst things that could be said to a woman. You really think it's that bad, Rabbi? No, I told him, your marriage is over. And literally within 30 days, the marriage was 30, 60 days, the marriage was over. It was unrectifiable. And he simply couldn't understand why. As much as I tried to explain to him, all of the confidence that a wife has is based on how beautiful her husband views her as. The second a husband tells his wife, she's overweight, she's boring like this moron, she is not interesting, she could do something to fix something, he simply murdered his wife. If he took a knife and killed her, to her, it wouldn't be actually as bad. Because that damage is not only not fixable there and then, she's never going to forget it. Even in her next relationship, which hopefully is with a normal person, she's still always going to have this self-conscious thing in the back of her mind that our first husband told her she's boring. Even if the new husband says, no, you're amazing, I love you, you're tzadikah, it's going to take literally years of work and prayer and probably even fasting just to remove this one awful statement. And the worst part about it, he tells me, no, I've told her that a few times already before. And I told him, okay, look, let's just, this is one of the few times I actually had to, I told him, okay, I'm done. I can't help you. I can't help you. He goes, I don't understand why you're taking it so hard. I'm like, you don't understand. You just daughtered my sister. You just murdered one of the daughters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You want me to sit? What do you want me to do with you? The reason for all this is arrogance was sky high. He thought he was a gift to the world because he had a few shekels, because he succeeded in a few things. So he figured you could just say whatever you want. Well, you can't. And when you do, you're hurting someone, and it's very difficult to fix. Guys that tell their wives about how they need to improve their looks are destroying the marriage. You want something done, like your wife losing weight, or I don't know, put on some makeup to beautify herself, do it indirectly. Do it indirectly, meaning you could get her a gift, say, listen, honey, I sent you to a spa. I brought you a whole day in a spa over there. It's the best spa. Everything's already paid for. I'll take care of the kids. And of course, tell the spa people on the side, listen, beautify, do a few things so she could see herself that way, perhaps even want to do that. Or you could simply talk to somebody that she's close to, that's close to you, that's not going to destroy your marriage. Usually it has to be somebody that has some yirat shamayim to, sneak in a few words here and there. Maybe convince them, tell them, listen, I started exercising recently, because I want to look better for my husband. Maybe that's going to give her the hint that maybe she should do the same thing. Or, I don't know, whatever it is, but you have to do it indirectly. Never, ever, ever tell your wife she has to improve anything when it comes to her looks. Never. Why? You're simply destroying the marriage. Now, I could easily tell you guys that really you should be so holy that your wife is beautiful in your eyes at all times. But that's not reality for the vast majority of the world. Because the vast majority of the world has looked at so much filth on the internet and at work and at all types of meetings and all types of movies and all types of garbage that they're constantly comparing their wife to some zonah. They have this image in their mind of some prostitute that they saw, and they're comparing their tzadikah wife to that. So to tell you, no, your wife, it's tzadikah, you should always be beautiful in your eyes, that's really what it's supposed to be. But what can I do that we're in a situation where the vast majority of people, they may watch a Shiur Torah right now, 15 minutes after the Shiur Torah, they look at pornography. What can we do? We have to be realistic with the people. So give advice, give this information to your wife indirectly, and make sure it never comes back to you. There's all types of creative ideas. Get her a day at the spa, get her a friend, whatever, all types of things. But make sure that she never knows that you have any issue whatsoever. Not with weight, not with anything. And your eyes and your mouth should say she's always beautiful. Why? Because if you want to stay married, and happily married, that's what's required. If you've sanctified yourself, and you really truly love your wife, she will always be beautiful in your eyes at all times. But when a person doesn't, at the very least, they have to pretend. So, with that being said, the Ramban continues, and he says there were women that, like Kimchit, who married to have 7 righteous sons. They were high priests. And when the sages came to her and asked her, she said it's because of her modesty. She was so modest and so righteous that HaShem merited her to have such kids. This is the type of story you should tell your wife, to show her, look, you're modest too. You're beautiful too. You're righteous too. This is the type of story that a person can tell his wife, that it may not entice her as far as just the physical aspect of it, but when you light up the neshama and tell her, listen, this act has much more meaning than just simply some fluids exchanging bodies. We can bring something holy into the world. We could bring something beautiful to the world because of how we are, how we behave, not just right now, but throughout all of our days. During the days we're modest. During the nights we're modest. We didn't drink or go on double dates before this act. Instead of watching television, we prayed a little bit. Some people even fast during the day of intimacy. Again, some of these things are very high level. Pick and choose wisely. But the point being is, at the very least, don't do the horrible things. Hence the reason why I'm emphasizing those more than the others. Because if you simply don't ruin, at the very least, you'll be in a good position. But if you focus on doing great things while ignoring the bad things, meaning you don't focus on fixing the bad things, then it doesn't matter how many good things you do. One bad thing can ruin an entire life. You could be fasting, you could be praying, you could be learning, you could be giving stock, you could be doing all the great things in the world. You called your wife fat one time, she ruined your marriage. You called, you brought attention to your wife's face one time, she has a little zit or something. You ruined the intimacy. Why? The whole time she's intimate with you, she's thinking about some zit. She's thinking about some scratch she has. You mentioned some scar she has on her foot. You ruined the intimacy. Why? The whole time she's thinking how much you really want to be with somebody else because she has a scar on her foot or something that you mentioned. Yeah, but I fasted and I gave tzedakah and I told her she's beautiful. Yeah, but you ruined it. You ruined it. It's just like if you make a 5-course meal by the best chef in the world. And this chef has a whole team of chefs, and they're also the best in the world. And they bring the best ingredients in the world. Of course, everything kosher. And they'll work all day on making the feast of kings. And they bring the best vegetables and the best ingredients and the best meat and the best chicken and the best everything in the world. And they put it all in beautiful presentation with plates from some foreign country and all types of decorations. And then they bring you in front of you, and right before you are about to go into this feast of kings, the waiter that served you your meal says, "Hap!" and a bunch of fluids come out of his face and join your food. What would you say if he says, "Enjoy"? What enjoy? You ruined the meal. Oh, why? Why did I ruin the meal? What? What do you mean? Half the body fluid you have in your face just joined my steak. And the rest of the stuff you put there. All right, what's the big deal? The steak is 20 ounces, so you have an ounce of fluids. Put it to the side. What? Put it to the side? You're going to yell at him. You may even hit the guy. You ruined a meal that took 5 hours to prepare. Same thing with a person that's so arrogant, he does not want to watch his speech. He does not want to change anything. She does not want to change anything. No, I'm good as I am. You're good as you are, you're going to be a very miserable person. Why? That little snot that came out of your mouth is going to ruin the entire meal. Hence the reason why the Ramban is being very, very particular about these words. And we finalize this section by him saying as follows. He should make his advances with her by speaking some words of love and desire, along with words of the awe of God, modesty, and purity of thought. See, here the Ramban is repeating the same thing, but in a different order to bring attention to something. There are different rules of the Torah, how to interpret it. One of the things we know is that when something is repeated, there's a reason for it, especially if there's a change in the order of the words. So here the Ramban is telling us again that he should make his advances at his wife by speaking to her words of love and desire, along with the awe of God and modesty and purity of thought. We said this already, but he changed something. Where here he says, speak to her with love and desire. Why the change? To teach us, says Rav Ephraim, to teach us that yes, you have to entice her with beautiful words of how much you love her and touch her heart. But always remember, she's still a human being. She's still limited to the physical limitations of this world, and so are you. So if you know that she is turned on and enticed by you telling her how beautiful she is, and even particular descriptions of body parts that she has without being completely filthy, this is the time to do it. This is the time to do it. Yes, you can tell her about the different body parts that she has and how beautiful this and how beautiful that. This is the time. Why? She is human. Even if she's righteous, even if she's whatever you think she is and what you know she is, she's still human. And it's important for a woman to hear that she's beautiful from her husband. Now, the Ramban is telling us, don't just play on the emotions, because sometimes I love you is not enough. Don't just depend on the righteous act, because sometimes the righteous act is not enough. Sometimes she needs you to tell her specifics about her body. She wants to know you're looking at her. A husband that does not look at his wife is a husband that's torturing his wife. Why? If you're not going to look at her, who will? Carlos at the supermarket? She made herself beautiful that night for you. If you're not looking at her, it's like you don't love her. Now you can say, no, I love her. If you love her, you look at her. If you don't want to look at her, you don't love her. And she needs to know you're looking at her. She needs to know you have noticed not just the dress, but even the body. And of course, only compliments for those of you that need further instructions and details. Only compliments. Never, ever mention anything wrong. This is how you ignite our heart. Now, this, the Ramban makes it idiot-proof again by telling us this telling should be before the relations, not during, so that the intentions will be free for the sake of heaven. Meaning, this talk about how righteous she is and how modest she is and how this act is going to bring a righteous child to the world, all of that is before the act. During the act, don't mention kimchit, don't mention the Baba Sali, don't mention righteous kids, don't mention any of that. Why? That's not the time. The time of saying those things was before to motivate her to want to be there with you. Once you're together, it's a completely different world. And that world we will discuss Be'ezrat Hashem the next time we learn together about the beauty of Jewish intimacy according to our Torah and according to our sages. Thank you very much for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of you that learned with us, that's supporting our organization. Anyone that wants to donate can go to the new campaign that we have, bhshas.org. That's B as in Be'ezrat, H as in Hashem, Shas is shas.org. You could donate over there, or you could simply go to one of our other websites, our main website, be'ezrathashem.org, or donate on YouTube, or donate on whatever, a bunch of other places. If you want to donate, there's plenty of places to do it. Oh, last but not least, I want to let you guys know that there is a new thing that we started. We have our podcast, which Baruch HaShem, interviewing our different students from around the world on video. But we're also starting something, we started already something new, which is interviews that are audio only, an audio interview. This is really catered for women that want to be interviewed that are our students, or men that don't want their face to be on camera. So anyone that's interested in being interviewed to know their tshuva story, how you were impacted in a positive way from our organization and the lectures and everything else, whether it's myself or Rabbi Ephraim's lectures or Rabbi Sharvit or any of the other rabbis of the organization, please contact us, and Be'ezrat Hashem will arrange for one of the people on the team to contact you and do a short interview asking you some questions. And Be'ezrat Hashem, after that, they put that together, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be posting many of these interviews in the coming weeks, Be'ezrat Hashem. Thank you again for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every one of you. And Be'ezrat Hashem, you're all, and we all, will achieve what the Ramban really meant to teach us, which is achieving true holiness during the act of intimacy. Kol tu b'cha b'atzlacha.
זה ידידי הרב ירון ראובן שמסר את נפשו ומוסר את נפשו, ולכן ידידיי ואהוביי אני רוצה לעשות לו כאן הפתעה הערב. אני צריך מכם 10 או בחורים או אברכים שיקבלו עליהם ללמוד את הש"ס בשנה, 7 דפים ליום, 3.5 שעות ביום. בעזרת השם יזכו במלגה מכובדת מארגון בעזרת השם. ש"ס בשנה, מי שהראשון מוזמן, הראשונים יבואו לשולחן הנשיאות בזריזות. ברוך השם, 17 לומדי תורה שקיבלו על עצמם את סיום הש"ס. 17 סיומי ש"ס בשנה לכבודה של תורה, לכבוד עם ישראל, לכבוד הקדוש ברוך הוא שישתבח בבניו ויאמר בני בכורי ישראל, עמלי תורה שקיבלו על עצמם לבוא וללמוד 7 דפים ביום, לבוא ולזכות את עם ישראל. ברוכים תהיו.